Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi BECHOROS Daf Yud Aleph. We are holding 12 lines from the top. So how do we redeem the firstborn donkey? Pasuk speaks about using a seh. Seh can be either a goat or a sheep, right? So from that family. Suppose he doesn't have an animal. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Reish Lakish, Mi sheish li petach hamor. He has a firstborn donkey, but no seh to use for redemption. Ve'en lo yiseh levdoisai. What do? Peideu v'shavyoy. So you can use any material of equivalent value to the donkey, and that works as a pidyon. Now, Laman, whose opinion are we aligned with? Elim with Rabbi Yehuda. Are we going like Rabbi Yehuda? It's not going to work. Ha'amra-torah. Ha'amar, he told us the other day. This wasn't with respect to substantiating his opinion that the petach hamar prior to redemption is off limits, it's asur b'hana, because look how exacting the Torah was with respect to the pidyon requirement. Ha'amar, he tells us, Kpida olav Torah b'seh. Torah was particular to use a seh, so it would seem that it's a seh and only a seh that could be used. It can't use matzah me'al. Apparently we're speaking like Reb Shimon, who says, well, the petach hamar to begin with is really mutar b'hana, so he doesn't work with that specificity, with that exactness, and we assume that according to Reb Shimon, it's a bit more lenient. You can use any material of equal value. So you have two options. You choose to use a seh. It works with any value. Or as we mentioned yesterday, there is some sort of rabbinic minimum, but it doesn't have to be of equal value to the chamar. It's working based on the animal factor that it's a seh. A seh exchanges for the chamar. Option B is a value-oriented exchange, exchanging with material of equal value. Rav Acha masni hachi. Now Rav Acha, in fact, presented, as we had said, that Reish Lakish, who allows using other materials of equal value, is according to Reb Shimon. But Ravina really had an issue with this. How could we align Reish Lakish's halacha with Reb Shimon only? The fact is, we have a formula discussed back in Maseches Erev and Daf Mem Vav. When there is a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda. So why would Reish Lakish present a halacha like Rabbi Shimon? Number two, v'sasum latanak Rabbi Yehuda. And the anonymous Mishnah, the actual Mishnah which we had the other day, was also aligned with Rabbi Yehuda, that the petach hamar is asur b'hana, etc. But Amar Salach Rabbi Shimon, and now Reish Lakish is presenting like Rabbi Shimon. Ella, rather, I feel with him Rabbi Yehuda. Truth is, Reish Lakish, who allows other materials to be presented in exchange for the petach hamar, is even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Lo yeh pidyon chamer min ha'hekdesh. It's unreasonable to assume that the pidyon of a petach hamar should be more strict and more limited than when you redeem hekdesh. If you have hekdesh material, you can redeem it with any material of equal value. The same with petach hamar. When the Torah referred to a seh as being used, it wasn't to make it more difficult, to limit it to a seh, to make it easier for us, to give us a second, cheaper option. So the first option is of equal value. Second option is if you choose to use an animal, it's a whole different process. The animal method does not require equality in value. So even if it's a cheap seh used to exchange for a big chamor, it's okay. In fact, Rav Nachman, brother of Yosef, what did he do? Parakli b'shulki, b'shavyeh. He exchanged the petach hamar for cooked vegetables of equal value. Okay, so the neighbor had a firstborn donkey. He jumps in the middle of the night and he does a pidyon. Does it work? It's Ruvain's donkey and Shimon's pidyon padi, it works. So even though it was without permission, Only by Truma do we have a special pasuk, atem gam atem, that it has to be with full consent of the owner, but by Petach Hamor there's no such pasuk. Technically, anybody who does it, it can work. Now the question is, who keeps the donkey that was now redeemed? Does it go to Shimon who did the pidyon? He earns the right to the actual donkey. Or perhaps it belongs to the rightful owner, the first owner. Now, leave it to Shimon, according to Shimon who says that Reuven, the donkey owner, had access to his donkey prior to pidyon. It was mutar bahana. There's no question according to him what we do. Even the Amr, since he holds mutar bahana, that the Petach Hamor, even pre-pidyon, is mutar bahana, money the binding would certainly considered one of the owner's possessions. You have no right to take it from him. The question will apply. Alib the Rabbi Yehuda, going to Rabbi Yehuda, the Amr who says Asr bahana, the firstborn donkey is Asr bahana prior to pidyon. No. So who's the owner? Shall we say lehegdish medamile? It compares it to a hegdish. Rachmana Amar. What does the Torah say? Who does the Torah grant ownership to the hegdish that was redeemed? To the one who redeems it. Rachmana Amar. If we have a hegdish item, whoever is lucky enough to redeem it, he keeps it. V'nasan hakesef, he offers the money, pays off. It reverts to his ownership. So he's the owner of the new Petach Hamor. Or you can say Kivan the Kanilu bebeni beni. Kivan the Kanilu the beni beni. Fact is, Reuben has an element of ownership, even in a Petach Hamor, which is Asr Bahana, Beni, Beni. That's differential, right? The difference. The differential between the actual value of the Hamor, which is $1,000 in the set, which was $2. Chad Gadya, right? Betray Zuzit. But technically, he has a $98 ownership in that Petach Hamor. As soon as he redeems it, he'll keep the rest. So that's considered an element of ownership. You can't take it away from him. It's incomparable to Hegdish, where once you give it to Hegdish, it's not yours anymore. The only way to redeem it is to redeem it with something of value, of equal value. So it's very different. Because the redemption doesn't have to have equal value. The set could be Chad Gadya, right? Trezuzit. It's an interesting shayla. So the fellow jumped in and did pidyon on his neighbor's thing. It works, but who owns it? Amar Nachman Tashmai comes at right. We have a brisa. Hagoyin Petach Hamor shel Chaberoi. The fellow stole a Petach Hamor. Mishal Tashlam Kefil. L'baylam. He was caught red-handed. He has to pay back double, like any other theft. Who does he pay to? The owner. V'aval b'shein le'achshav. And even though Reuben, the owner, doesn't have much interest in this, doesn't have value, doesn't have use, because it's usher to use. So right now he doesn't. But further down the road, if he would redeem it, he would have access to this chamar. So he's considered the owner, and he deserves to get the double payment. Now, who is speaking in this price? Is it Reb Shimon? Is it Reb Yehuda? Mani ilim Reb Shimon. Is it Reb Shimon speaking? What's the issue to begin with? What do you mean he doesn't have any interest in it right now? He does. He can fully use it even before pidyon. Amai ein li'achshav. What do you mean he doesn't have? Apparently we're going to Reb Yehuda. So although currently in its present state he can't access the donkey, it's usher, but potentially he can get something from it, so he's considered the owner. Doesn't that prove our case? Now if we're going to compare a Petach Hamor to Hegdish, why is there kefil? If one steals an Hegdish item, not a privately owned item, a Hegdish item, there's no kefil. The gunav beisa ish. Pasuk describes the ganav paying kefil as one who stole from the owner's house. That's how the pasuk presents it. As opposed to stealing something from Hegdish, there's no kefil. The fact that there's kefil, double payment for stealing a Petach Hamor, that confirms v'sulei midi. That ends our discussion. That in fact, Reuben is the legal owner of this chamor, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Hence, when Shimon does a redemption, unauthorized redemption, thank you very much, but Reuben keeps the donkey. Achas bikra, v'achas le bikra. Now the Mishnah concluded with an interesting, almost cryptic sounding statement that the set that was used for pidyon will be entered into the pen for maser behema purposes, which is when you have a bunch of goats and sheep, you count them one by one as they come out. Number 10 is a maser behema. Maser behema only applies to something which you personally raised. If you bought it, you got it as a gift, you're potter from Maser Behema. In any case, the Mishnah refers to something about Maser Behema regarding a seh. What's going on? Tana Rabban, Ketzad Amru Nichnas Ladilis Asa. What situation does the Mishnah instruct us to put the seh into the pen for Maser Behema purposes, meaning that it's obligated to Maser Behema? You can't be speaking about a conventional case where the seh used for redemption was delivered to the kohen. In that case, it would be exempt from Maser Behema. It was imported from it was received as a gift. There's no Maser Behema on that. You can't apply this rule to a case of Bebaliat Kohen that the seh was redeemed the thing and then give it to the kohen. Shari Shanin, we have a well-known halacha, kuach, animal which had been purchased, or Vishanitli Matan given to him as a gift. Since he didn't personally raise it, Potter Maser Behema is exempt. So that's out. Ella must be. How could you have a seh used for pidyon petach hamar, which is chayiv and Maser Behema? How could that be? Ella must be talking about an exotic case. Listen to this case. You can have a seh used for pidyon, and it's obligated to Maser Behema. Ella be Yisrael shoyle asara safek pitrei chamer b'teich beis. If you recall in the Mishnah, we learned that if there's an uncertainty, a safek, whether it's firstborn donkey or not, the owner has to make a pidyon to address the isser element within that petach hamor. You have to do it. But ultimately, since it's an uncertainty, it's a safek, you don't give it to the kohen unless he can prove his case. So there are two elements in pidyon petach hamor. There's the redemption process, and then there's delivering the animal to the kohen, which he doesn't have to do if it's a safek. He ended up with 10 situations of safek, with 10 such goats used for redeeming a safek, which he keeps. It's chayiv Maser Behema, because ultimately it's his goats, his sheep, which he raised. Despite having undergone this sort of petach hamor redemption process, it's chayiv Maser Behema. That's the case of the Mishnah. Ela b'Yisrael, we're talking about a regular Yisrael. Shoyle asari had no less than 10. You accumulated 10 safek pitrei chamer b'teich beis. So you had 10 questionable petach hamors. Shemafresh alein asara seyin. You must designate 10 says on their account and redeem them. Uma asra and shalai. Now he has to do Maser Behema, and he will, he'll keep the bunch. He doesn't give it, rather than give it to the kohen. Misayele. So this understanding, this explanation of the Mishnah is a raya, is a proof, is a support. L'Rav Nachman. The Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ravo, Yisrael, Shoyle, this same case, Yisrael, Shoyle, Asora, Safek, Pitrei Chamer. Yisrael ends up with 10 suffix. Mafresh, Alein, Asora, Sein. He uses 10 sheep to redeem, but he keeps them. Ma'asra does Maser Behema, and Shalei keeps them. Vi Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ravo. Here comes the same halacha in a slightly different scenario. Instead of speaking about animals, we speak about, another similar case to this. Talking about a Pitrei Chamer again. Yisrael shohelo asora pitrei chamer. It gets a little bit more complex than the previous case. Yisrael had 10 asora pitrei chamer vadoin. Confirmed pitrei chamer, no question about it. Firstborns, b'teich beis in his stock. But he got it from where? He got it as an inheritance, as a Yerusha, from his grandfather, who happened to be a kohen, his mother's father. Shenaf loi meis avimai kohen. Hold it, we're not done. That grandfather got it from his grandfather, who happened to be Yisrael. This grandfather, the Kohen, Nafaloi, he received a batch of 10 firstborn donkeys from his grandfather, who was a Yisrael, his mother's father. Yisrael. Now, let's break it down step by step. So let's give them names, right? We have Reuven, the great-great-great-great-grandfather on top, the Yisrael. He had 10 petach hamors, which necessitated a proper pidyon. A, and B, necessitated giving the pidyon to the kohen. So both factors were present by the great-great-great-grandfather, by Reuven. Now, when it was transferred to his grandson, let's call him Shimon, the kohen, before the pidyon was done. So now, Shimon has to do pidyon. Although a kohen typically doesn't do pidyon petach hamor. Yeah, that's not something which he raised. But here, he didn't personally raise it. He got it from his grandfather, who was Yisrael. Where the chiyuv had already been activated. the obligation to do pidyon had already been activated while in Reuven's hands. So that obligation stands. The only difference is that Shimon, the grandson, the kohen, although he'll have to make the pidyon, but he'll keep the pidyon. He doesn't have to give it to another kohen because he himself is a kohen. So step one without step two. Now, before we got a chance to do anything, it was transferred to his grandson, who was a Yisrael. Now, he certainly has to do step one. He has to make the pidyon. The question is on step two. Must he deliver the Yiseh to the kohen or not? You can say, yeah, well, of course, he has to make a proper pidyon. But you can argue and say, no, the fact is he inherited it from his grandfather, Mr. Shimon, who had been absolved from step two. He sort of had a schus already to suffice with step one, which is the redemption without the delivery of the animal to the kohen, because he himself was a kohen. So he passes on everything to his grandson. Basically, Levi inherited the schus, the rights to keep the pidyon as well. And that is Rav Nachman's chiddush. So let's see it again. Mr. Reuven had 10 firstborn donkeys, which necessitates step one and step two, redemption and delivery to the kohen. Sorry, this is actually Levi. We're starting from the bottom of the pyramid. Which he got from his grandfather, the kohen, which is Shimon. And that fellow Shimon got it from his father Reuven. So since it went through the kohen in the middle, who was absolved from step two, likewise, and it gets down to Levi, he acquired that schus as well. He has that right to keep the redemption. Mafresh Halein Asara saying certainly has to set aside 10 says and make the petach amor, but ultimately he keeps them. And Ma'asr and Shaloi, he has to do Ma'asr Behema, and he keeps it. Here comes another case, same exact halacha, but in a different scenario. Instead of talking about animals, we speak about grains, regarding the ability, the schus, to keep the truma. Because even a kohen may not eat tevel, untithed produce. He has to separate truma and maser, but he keeps it. So it's a similar situation. It's a two-step process. And if it went through the hands of a kohen in the middle, even though currently it's owned by Yisrael, he acquires the rights to keep. He has to separate, do step one, but step two, he keeps. V'amar Nachum, Amar Avo, Yisrael she'eloi tvalem v'murachim b'seich beis. So let's start from the bottom. Levi had tevel v'murach, grain which had been, completed, it had been, a pile had been smoothed over, it's considered a finished grain, and it's chayv and truma maser. V'murachim tech beis. How did he get it? Shenaflin beis avi kohen. He got it from his grandfather, a kohen. And he got it from his grandfather Yisrael. Vois avi kohen. Nafloi, how did he get the inheritance? Beis avi Yisrael, from his grandfather Yisrael. So the original owner, the Reuven, the first Yisrael, had to do hafrasha, separate, and give it to the kohen. 2 steps. But when it's given to the middle fellow, the kohen, he has to do hafrasha, but step 2, he's absolved. He doesn't have to give it to a kohen. Now, when it gets to a Levi on the bottom of the list, he was zeicha to keep the truma. He has to separate, but he can keep it. Just like in the previous case. Ma'asr has to do the ma'asr on those materials, eventually, but he can keep the truma and the ma'asr. So it's identical to the case of the petach hamar, and the question is, why discuss both cases if they're really one and the same? So each case is unique in its own way, and therefore both have to be mentioned. Why? Di ashma'inan kamaisa. If only the first case with the petach hamar, since it came through the kohen, so ultimately the Yisrael on the receiving end also acquires that privilege to hold on to the seh. You know why? Mishum dekol mafresh v'koy, because the seh used to redeem the chamor is really a separate mafresh. It's separate. So since the kohen acquired the zechus, the rights to hold on to those potential says used for redemption. Likewise, that zechus, that right, gets passed on to his grandson. So it's as though the kohen had actually acquired, was zeicha, was kaina, the rights to those says, which he passes on to his grandson. But here by the the grain, where it's not like you're designating something from the outside, like a seh in exchange for the chamar. No, it's within the actual body of this grain that you're designating, a part of which goes for truma, for maser. Aval here, it's a bit more difficult to say that the kohen actually acquired something. It's embedded within the grain. The matanis, the gifts, the truma, the maser, which had not yet been identified and separated from the group, from the package. It's as though they were not separated, meaning even though potentially it's going to happen, it's as yet unidentified and not yet in existence. To be able to say on it, well, the kohen was zeicha, it doesn't exist yet. So in this case, perhaps you can't apply this concept. So perhaps only by the seh, which is a separate entity, you can say, well, the kohen had a zechus in that seh, which will be used for redemption, right? Because he has a zechus to keep it. So likewise, the grandson has that zechus, as opposed to truma, which is mixed into the tevel. It's not yet in existence. It's not an existing phenomenon. Perhaps that's not something which you can acquire and pass on to your grandson. And the answer is you could. On the other hand, if we only discuss the case of the truma, and where we say that the grandson has a chus to hold on to that truma on account of his grandfather, the kohen, who likewise had that zechus, I can argue the other way. I can say, here it makes more sense. It's more logical to apply this concept. Because ultimately you could take the truma and the maser from it in itself. So basically it's embedded within the pile of grain. And since the kohen already had ownership on that grain, so he acquired a zechus for the truma element within it, which he now passes on to his son Abel Hassan, but over there, where it's an external element. We're twisting the logic in the reverse now. Abel Hassan, but in the case of the seh, which is an external element coming to address the chamar, given the seh ma'amabai, asuyu mafresh, you have to bring the seh from the outside and designate it in exchange for the kohen. So perhaps in this case you can't consider the kohen as having acquired a zechus on that seh, which he hadn't yet designated as a redemption for the chamar. So it was a non-existing entity. You can't have zechus on that and pass that on to your kid. So the answer is no. In both cases we say the same point. After all, the kohen had a zechus to potentially hold on to that potential truma, that potential seh, in which case he passes that theoretical, hypothetical zechus to his grandson as well. And although he has to designate and redeem, and in the case of the truma, he has to designate and identify it as truma on the rest, but ultimately he doesn't have to deliver it to the kohen. Here comes a similar case, but a bit different. Instead of involving a kohen, it involves a goy. We turn to a fellow bought finished grain from a goy. And we're speaking grain that grew in Eretz Yisrael, and we're working with the concept that a goy's ownership does not exempt the produce from truma and maser. Maser and shaloi. So although the buyer who's currently owning the is a yid, he has to do maser, but he doesn't have to pass it on to a kohen. Why? Because of the same idea. The fact is the guy, the prior owner, was not obligated in passing on truma and maser. He's exempt from mitzvahs, so just like he had that exemption, you also do. So you have to do the truma and maser procedure, but you don't have to give it to a kohen. You acquired ownership, you have the schus to the monetary aspect of that truma and maser. Now, who completed the grain? Who made miruach, the smoothing of the pile? Who activated the chiv of truma, the merchinu man? Ilam merchinu b'kicham. Did the guy do that? In any case, it's exempt from everything. The ganachah, Torah says your grain, the one that you produced, not the one that the guy produced. El merchinu Yisrael b'shus oved. Apparently, we're speaking that the guy who was the owner of the farm had a Jewish worker who did the miruach, in which case it activates the chiyuv. And the ein kinya ma'asron. So now the current owner who bought it from the guy will have to do the master, because as we explained, it still has kedusha despite having been owned by a guy. The ein kinya lo b'kechavim. The guy does not have the power, doesn't have the power of ownership, Beretz Yisrael, and a produce that grew in Eretz Yisrael afkia, to extricate it from miyad mas, from the master obligation. And that's why you have to do the master on this fruit. But v'hin shaloi, but you can keep it. Why? Here comes a piece of logic. Because the new owner tells the kohen here, he says, you have no right to demand it of me. I'm coming mikayach on account of a person with whom you had no claim. Gavra, a person, the guy, dina bade. You could not have challenged him in din, meaning you had no claim against him. The guy is exempt from mitzvahs. So likewise, I inherited that power as well. I have that schus. I will hold on to the material. Now comes a Mishnah. So you realize this is very similar to the previous Gemara. If an interim, it went through, right, a conduit which is exempt, so the end user at the very end of this chain also can build on that exemption and keep it. But we have a Mishnah. A fellow entrusted a kusi, he was not a very trustworthy fellow with his produce, or unlearned fellow, you can assume it's the same material regarding Maser and Shemitah. So if your produce had been kosher, had been okay regarding Maser, or it was not Shvitas produce, you can assume it's one and the same item, no exchange occurred, no tinkering. But it's like Kecham, you gave it to a guy to wash, Kipei Roisa. In that case, we assume the guy, flipped it, exchanged yours for his, which he liked better, so you have to treat it like his produce, in which case you have to do the Truma and Maser all over again. And if it's a question of Shemitah, you have to make sure you discard it before the expiration, before the beer. Reb Shimon Demai says, well, it's not for sure that he switched it. Demai, it's Demai, it's in a state of uncertainty, which means to say, there's a suffix, and you have to do the hafrasha, you have to separate the Truma, but you can keep it. Because maybe he did, maybe he didn't switch it. Amar Belazar. Let me explain to you what's going on. All agree you have to designate the Truma and the Master. The kind of question is you have to deliver to the Kayan. Tanakama Sovar, Ba'di Chalfinu. Tanakama says he certainly exchanged a material. His case, the material that he gave you is certainly Chayiv, it's Tevel. Ubay Misninu L'Kayan. You have to give the Truma to the Kayan as per ordinary Tevel, which is obligated in all tithings. Reb Shimon Sovar, Reb Shimon says, Demai, we're not sure. So you have to address and account for all possibilities. You have to separate the Truma and the Maser, but you don't have to give it to the Kohen. Yosef Ravdimi, you're sitting, you're coming, saying over the Shmaita, this halach. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye responds, time of the Misap Kalon Lechalfinu Lechalfinu. It seems that Reb Shimon is based on an uncertainty. Did he flip it? Did he not? But suppose he for sure exchanged the material, and he gave you the stuff that grew by the guy, the kuli alma, ba'il mesvinu l'kayin. All agree, even if Shimon would agree, you have to give the truma to the kayin. Why? V'amar Rav Shmuel, Amar Chanina, we learned halakeach tvalim ma'id kechavim. Person bought real tevel from a guy, mimurachen, right? Finished product. Ma'asran, you have to do the master, but you keep it, ben shalai. Because of the svara we said before, he took it from a guy who himself wouldn't have to give it. So he responded like this: Dilma, perhaps kama truma gedola, kama truma maser. Perhaps it depends on what we're talking about. Truma gedola, yep, he has to give it to the kohen, but truma maser or not. What's the difference? It's based on a pasuk. So sort of shying away from that logic, now it's going to be source based. Produce purchased from a guy is exempt from truma gedola, but not truma maser. I mean, you have to separate them, but truma gedola you still have to give to the kohen. Truma maser you keep. So Abai says, actually, right on Askarta Mosa. You just reminded me of something. Askarta Mosa. Damar Shimon Levi. Menayin lokech devalim mimurachan med gechavim. How do we know that if a person purchased tevel from a guy, shepatam trumas maser, the trumas maser, which is a tenth of the maserishin, you're exempt from that. You don't have to give it to the Koyin, Shanama Valvim Tadaber, Ramar Talein, the Pasuk addresses the Levim regarding the Chiv of Trumas Maser, Ki Sikechu Eis Bnei Yisrael, when you get from a Yisrael, you get the Maser Rishon, then you separate another tenth and give it to the Koyin. We learn only material which was sourced by a Yid. Tvolim, the Tevel, Shatalakech, so which you purchase from a Yid, Ata Mafish Trumas Maser, you have to set aside Trumas Maser and deliver it to the Koyin, Noisin the Koyin. But in our case, where it's tvalim shat lekech when if you got it from a guy, a special exemption, iato mafish menturas maser v'nes l'koyin. Although you have to do maser, but you don't give it to the koyin. So technically, material is obligated, but there's a special exemption regarding to maser. You don't give it to the koyin. And that's the conclusion. It's based on a pasuk, and that's why if a person purchases from a guy. Even in Eretz Yisrael, even if the digun occurred by Yisrael, so it activated, but now that you own it and you got it from a guy, you have to do Trumas and Masters. But only the Truma Gedolah has to be delivered to a kohen, Trumas Master you keep. You can sell it to a kohen and make some money on it, right? Mishnah concluded, if the set used in exchange for the chamor died, you can have anah from it. The Meis Hecha, where did it die? In the Yisrael's hands, after they delivered it to the kohen, what's going on? Either when the Meis Beit Kohen died, once it arrived at the kohen, V'nana boy, it goes without saying. Why does the Mishnah have to say you could have anah from it? V'nana boy kohen, the kohen's going to have anah. Of course, pshita, of course, it's his. It's his sheep that died. Why shouldn't he enjoy it? El the Meis Beit Baila was speaking that the sheep was still in the hands of the Israel and it died there. V'nana boy kohen, and the Mishnah is coming to teach us that the kohen will be able to have anah from it. Hanami pshita, again, this is an obvious halacha. Obviously, why not? Why would I think otherwise? Perhaps I can think, hold it, listen. Called since it hadn't yet arrived, before it was delivered to the kohen, the kohen doesn't have rights to it yet. It's still sort of an interim stage here. And perhaps it's asur. You see, it's like a three-stage process perhaps. Initially the chamor is asur, then when it gets swapped, the Isser transfers to the Seh until it gets to the Kohen, and then it's relieved of its Isser. That's what I would think. Kamash Malam comes to the Mishnah and informs us otherwise. No, the Afresh at the point of Hafrasha, as soon as he designates this sheep, B'shusay the Kohen Kohen, it's as if it arrived at the Kohen, meaning you completed the process, and even if it died before it was actually physically delivered, it's considered the Kohen's, and can have anah from it without any issues. Okay, for a quick Chazorah. Value of the exchange. So if it's a seh, there's no written value in the Torah. We discussed it yesterday. There's some minimums, but if he uses just plain material, it has to be of equivalent value to the chamor to be considered an effective pidyon, even a vegetable soup. If he was paid his friend's pet a chamor, it works. But in terms of who gets the chamor, we concluded very definitively, the sulay midi, of course, it belongs to the rightful owner, the owner of the chamor himself. Mishnah spoke about this undergoing maser behema. The question was, well, if it was a proper seh given to the kohen, then it's patah from maser behema because it wasn't raised in house. The answer was speaking that the Yisrael actually ended up with a seh used for pidyon because he had 10 sveikos and he did 10 on account of the suffix and he kept it. And that's why he does maser behema. We have a couple of cases where the fellow inherited from his grandfather a kohen, and in both cases we allow him to retain his grandfather's zechusim. So he has to designate the seh, but he can keep it. He has to designate the truma and keep it as well. Regarding buying from a goy, we concluded based on a pasuk that the truma gedel has to be delivered to a kohen, but not the trumas masra. We had a chiddush at the end of the daf that once you do the pidyon, it's considered as though it was delivered to the kohen. In which case, even if it dies or whatever before delivery, it's mutar b'hana, as though it was already delivered to the kohen. Okay, all the best to you and hatzlacha.